There are moments in life when you feel like you're standing on solid ground, only to realize it was quicksand all along. For the first time in a long time, I thought I had my life back together. I had moved to a new city, put distance between myself and all the chaos, and against all odds, given my marriage another shot. Steve and I had reconnected. He was saying all the right things and doing all the right things. The late-night calls, the flowers for no reason, the way he looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. It was like I had stepped into a version of my life where all the damage had been undone, and I let myself believe in it. I was on the phone with my mom, and as a confession, the words "no one should pray for" left her mouth, my mind shut down. Like a power surge had fried every connection in my brain. My body was still there, still breathing, still holding the phone to my ear, but everything inside me was blank. My own mother? The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. I sat there, waiting for my brain to catch up, waiting for something, anything, to tell me I had misunderstood. But I hadn't. Angela's breathing was uneven on the other end of the line, like she was bracing for the inevitable fallout, like she knew she had just detonated a bomb and was waiting to see how much of me would survive the blast. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the world to snap back into focus. There had to be an explanation, something rational, some way to make this not what it sounded like. Maybe she was lying. Maybe the drugs had finally eaten away at her mind, twisting her reality into something unrecognizable. She had been spiraling for years, slipping further and further away from the mother I once knew. But even as I clung to that desperate excuse, something deep inside me, something I did not want to acknowledge, was already screaming the truth. Angela had never lied to me. And Steve? A pathological liar. This was the man who had looked me in the eyes and promised my engagement ring was a one-of-a-kind, custom-made piece, only for me to find out it came from a pawn shop. The man who had sworn up and down that he had ordered an expensive couch for my grandmother, when the reality was he never even placed the order. The man who spent years selling me this fantasy about his family swimming in wealth, only for me to realize they were barely keeping their heads above water like everyone else. Everything about Steve had been built on deception, lies stacked on top of lies, so tightly woven together that even when I caught him, even when the proof was right there in front of me, he would twist the truth just enough to make me question myself. So why would this be any different? Why would he suddenly not be lying about this? The nausea hit me so hard I had to press a hand against my stomach. It was true, and yet my brain fought against it, clawing for something, anything, that would let me stay in denial just a little bit longer. I had spent so much of my life believing that, despite all his faults, Steve loved me, that underneath the manipulations and the selfishness, he still saw me as his person. But now, I had to face something far more devastating than just his betrayal. He hadn't just cheated, he had destroyed me in the most personal, unforgivable way possible, because out of every woman in the world, he hadn't chosen some random stranger. He hadn't chosen a coworker or an old flame or someone whose name I'd never have to hear again. He had chosen Angela, and that was something I could never come back from. If you're new here, subscribe. Our growing community isn't afraid of the dark truths most people refuse to talk about. Even my relationship with my mother, Angela, felt different. There was space between us that hadn't been there before. We still talked, but something was off. Our conversations were shorter. She didn't ask as many questions. When we used to be thick as thieves, now it was like she was holding back, as if she had built a wall between us and was terrified of what might happen if I got too close. Till she released those words like a timing bomb. I need to tell you something. It was like my body knew before my mind could catch up. My fingers went numb. My heartbeat slowed, thick and heavy in my chest, like my own body was bracing for impact. I didn't speak. I just waited. And then, like a guillotine, she dropped the blade. I slept with Steve. It started when you were still together before you left. The truth wasn't sudden. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a lightning strike that split my world in two. No, the truth was a slow leak, one that had been dripping into my life for years, pooling at my feet, creeping up around me while I told myself it was just my imagination, because the signs had been there all along. Angela had always been around, always involved in my relationship with Steve, but not in the way a mother should be. It wasn't just the casual check-ins or the motherly concern. It was something more, something that, looking back, made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. The late-night phone calls, ones I had assumed were about me, about her checking in on my relationship, making sure I was okay. I used to think it was sweet that she cared, but now I realized she wasn't calling because of me. She was calling for him. The way she would linger in our conversations, always keeping Steve engaged, always making sure she had his attention. How her voice would change, softening, almost flirtatious. I remembered catching her looking at him sometimes, a look I had brushed off as admiration or pride, because what else would it be? But it was never just admiration, was it? It was something else, something I had been too blind, or maybe just too trusting, to see. And then there were the awkward moments when we were all together. Moments where I'd walk into a room and the air would shift, like I had interrupted something I wasn't supposed to hear. Steve would clear his throat, Angela would adjust her posture, and I, stupid, oblivious me, would shake off the weirdness and tell myself I was just overthinking things. Because what was the alternative? That my own mother was flirting with my husband? That my husband was flirting back? No, that was insane, wasn't it? And then came the biggest red flag. The one I should have paid attention to but didn't. The way Angela suddenly distanced herself after I left Steve the first time. I had assumed she was just disappointed in me, that she thought I was giving up too soon, walking away from something that could have been fixed. But now I knew the truth. She had distanced herself because she was guilty, because it was no longer about watching me suffer in my relationship. No, it was about choosing a side. And she had chosen his. That was the hardest part to accept. Not just that Steve had betrayed me. Not just that Angela had betrayed me. But when it came down to it, when it mattered, they had both chosen each other over me. And the worst part, Steve had acted like he missed me when we got back together, as if he wasn't sleeping with my mother behind my back the entire time. I needed the truth from him, not just my mother's version, not just the gut-wrenching realization that had been clawing at me since she whispered her confession over the phone. No, I needed to look him in the eyes, to watch the way his face shifted, if it shifted at all, to see if he had even a shred of guilt left in his hollow, deceitful body. So when Steve suggested we meet, I didn't hesitate. We were in different cities, and he picked an Airbnb halfway between us, a neutral ground, like we were two warring factions coming together for peace talks. Except there would be no peace, no negotiations, just the truth. I pulled into the driveway, my fingers gripping the steering, while so tightly my knuckles ached. The house was quiet, tucked away from the main road and secluded, perfect for someone who wanted privacy. I stepped out, my stomach twisting into knots, but my face was a mask, expressionless, controlled. Dangerous. He had no idea what was coming. The second I walked in, I felt sick. Not because of the place itself, it was nice and cozy, the kind of place a couple might book for a weekend getaway. But because he was there, sitting on the couch like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't the reason my world had imploded. Steve stood when he saw me, his lips curving into that familiar smirk. That infuriating smirk he always used when he thought he was in control. "Hey," he said casually, like this was just another night, just another conversation. I wanted to rip that smug expression off his face, but I didn't. I forced my shoulders to relax, my expression to remain neutral. I needed him to think I didn't know yet. That was the key. If he thought I was still his Vivian, the girl he had effortlessly lied to for years, then maybe, just maybe, he'd slip. We sat across from each other, a small table between us. The space felt tight, suffocating. There was nowhere for him to run. I let a few beats of silence pass, watching him, studying every movement. He looked too comfortable, too at ease for a man who should have been terrified. Maybe he still believed he could talk his way out of anything. Maybe he thought I had come to beg, to plead, to salvage us. That was his first mistake. His second, thinking I hadn't already decided how this night would end. I took a slow breath, leaned forward just enough to make it clear I wasn't here for games. Then I said it. I know about you and my mother. And just like that, the air shifted. Steve stared at me, his head tilting just slightly as if I had just spoken in a language he didn't understand. What are you talking about? His voice was steady, too steady, like he had practiced this reaction 1,000 times in his head, just in case this moment ever came. I didn't blink. He was good at lying, a professional. But his eyes, they gave him away. That flicker of panic, the way his pupils dilated just a little too fast, like his brain was scrambling for a way out. I let the silence stretch between us. Let him feel it. Let it seep into his skin, into his bones. Then, slowly, deliberately, I pulled out my phone. His shoulders tensed. Barely. But I caught it. I scrolled through my contacts, pressed the call button, and placed the phone on the table between us. Speaker on. The ringing felt endless. Each second stretched, filling the room with an unbearable weight. Then, a click, a slow inhale, and my mother's voice, small, hesitant. Vivian. I didn't waste time. My voice was sharp, cutting straight to the bone. Tell him what you told me. Silence, the kind that suffocates. I could hear the way her breath hitched, the way her mind was probably racing, searching for an exit. And then, in the softest whisper, she said it. I already did. That was it. That was my proof. I turned my gaze back to Steve and I watched it happen. The moment the air was sucked out of his lungs, the way his face paled, the smirk wiped clean, his lips parted just slightly in shock. This was the moment he cracked. No more pretending. No more twisting reality. So, I asked, my voice eerily calm, are you still going to sit there and lie to me? His mouth opened, then closed. He ran his hands through his hair, his fingers pulling slightly, as if that would somehow make this all disappear. Finally, he exhaled, shoulders slumping. And then, barely above a whisper, he muttered, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Like what, Steve? I didn't wait for him to say another word. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out. The air outside was thick and humid, but the chill running down my spine made it feel like winter had punched through the summer night. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears, my breath coming fast. But I didn't run. I didn't need to. Behind me, the door burst open, and there he was. Steve, the man I had once loved, the man I had trusted enough to rebuild my life with, now nothing more than a desperate liar scrambling after me. Vivian, wait. His voice was raw, strained, filled with a panic that came too late. I didn't stop. Please, just talk to me. His footsteps quickened. I could hear the slap of his sneakers against the pavement. He sucked in a breath, his voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. I should have laughed. That was the kind of thing you said when you accidentally broke someone's favorite mug, not when you slept with their mother. I didn't slow down. It was a mistake, he pushed, coming up beside me, his hands outstretched as if he could physically rewind time. I don't even know why it happened. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I stopped walking, turned to him, and for the first time I really saw him. The man who had gaslit me for years. The man who had lied to my face over and over and over again. The man who had made me believe we could fix things, who had held me at night and told me I was his world, while he was screwing my own mother behind my back. And suddenly I realized something. I didn't feel pain. Not the gut-wrenching, soul-crushing kind I thought I would. I didn't feel heartbreak. Didn't feel loss. I felt rage. Pure, unfiltered, blistering rage. Because this man, this pathetic excuse of a man, was standing here, begging for forgiveness with the same mouth he had used to kiss my mother. And he thought he still had a chance. I pulled out my phone. One last look at his name. At hers. And then I did it. Blocked them both. Both of them erased. I shoved my phone back into my pocket and turned away, walking into the night without looking back. And you know what the craziest part was? I wasn't even sad. Healing didn't come overnight. There were days when anger burned through me like wildfire, when I wanted to scream, break things, and demand answers I knew I would never get. There were nights when sleep refused to come, when my mind replayed their betrayal like a broken record. I'd stare at the ceiling, heart pounding, imagining all the ways I could have stopped it. If I had only paid more attention, if I had only left sooner, if I had only been enough. But that was the trap. That was the lie. Because the truth is that some betrayals have no logic. Some people are just selfish, and their actions, they had nothing to do with me. I stopped blaming myself, stopped wondering what I could have done differently, because the answer was nothing. Angela was supposed to be my mother, the one person in this world who should have protected me, loved me, stood by me. Instead, she made a choice, a conscious, deliberate choice, to sleep with the one person she knew would break me the most. Steve was supposed to be my husband, the man who vowed to love me, honor me, be faithful to me. Instead, he took everything sacred in our marriage and set it on fire. And for what? A moment of pleasure? A twisted ego boost? Some sick, selfish desire to have what wasn't his to take? I don't know. I don't care. What I do know is this: they lost me. Angela lost a daughter. And Steve lost the best thing that ever happened to him. And I refuse to waste another second mourning people who weren't mourning me. Because now I'm free. And I will never let people like that have a place in my life again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more content like this your way. And if you never want to miss a video, turn on the notification bell. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay honest with yourself.